14 minutes after 8 o'clock on the Big Breakfast Show, Southside FM 107.2, www.southsidefm.com. At this moment, it gives me great honor to say good morning to the federal leader of the Democratic Alliance, Mr. John Steenhuisen. Good morning to you.
Good morning to you and good morning to all the Southside listeners on this Thursday morning.
Thursday morning. How's the weather down there in Cape Town, Mr. Steenhuisen?
It's not as good as it is in Durban, but it's kind of close.
Look, we brought you on this show because obviously a lot of wards in the Indian community are under DA's control. So hopefully we can get some sort of answers from you to various queries and stuff being experienced in our wards, if that's okay with you.
Sure, no problem.
All right. So, what are the challenges? Firstly, we need to know what are the challenges with running a ward within a municipality that belongs to another party? What are the roadblocks, if any, like budget allocation and stuff like that there?
Well, I would say that I speak with some experience because I was a ward councillor in eThekwini municipality in Durban for 10 years. It's not easy. I mean, I think if one looks at the municipalities that are advancing and where the DAs have been able to really get things done, are municipalities where we govern with an outright majority or we're part of a coalition. It's very, very difficult to turn things around in a municipality when you're not in the driving seat, particularly when you have municipalities that simply do not listen to good advice, do not listen to issues coming from ward councillors, and do not listen, particularly when it comes to budget allocation, and are far more interested in the thieving and corruption, as we saw in eThekwini, from everything from the rubbish bin bags to corruption within the Metro Police to corruption with tenders and contracts. That seems to be the focus of a lot of the municipalities in KwaZulu-Natal, rather than service delivery and meeting the basic requirements of the Constitution says should be the focus of local government.
So you would say it is challenging. So, I mean, people are voting for DAs in their wards, and service delivery is a problem because of the budget allocations.
Yes, of course, and it would be a lot easier, as it has been in Joburg and Midvaal and Gauteng and our Umgeni municipality just up the road from you in Howick and Hilton, where we're able to demonstrate that where the votes give us a majority, we're really able to move the needle. Now, it's not so you can't get stuff done in the opposition. What I'm saying to you is it's a lot easier where you have an opportunity to be able to be in government. And municipalities like eThekwini Metro, for instance, are not far off. The ANC did not get a majority in the last election. They've relied on some of the smaller parties that have gone into alliance with them, parties like Visman Reddy's and others who are in alliance with them and keeping them in government. I think it would be far healthier, for instance, in eThekwini, if we were able to form an opposition coalition where we'd be able to then start delivering in a far more equitable, efficient and effective way, as we're doing in Umgeni municipality up the road and many other municipalities around the country.
100%. So there are many challenges in communities like crime, water shortage and many other concerns. What are the plans in place to combat these concerns? Like I can tell you, for example, Mr. Steenhuisen, at the moment in the Indian communities, copper theft, copper pipes is a pandemic at the moment. So like what can the DA do in terms of proposing that bill that Fikile Mbulula spoke about where they're going to ban the sale of scrap metal?
Well, you start by telling people the truth. And the reality is there's already an act of parliament that makes the theft of critical infrastructure a criminal act and has a jail sentence attached to it of up to 30 years. So people like Mr. Mbulula and others mustn't use the excuse that there's no laws or nothing to prevent. There absolutely is. The problem we have is with detection and apprehension and then prosecution of these individuals. And the reality is that 90% of the people that are involved in these activities do so without any criminal sanction and without being held accountable. And so they're essentially getting away with theft. And which is why we've done a number of things. On our website we have a very comprehensive plan about how you could deal with copper theft in the city of Cape Town, where we're in government. For instance, we have a whole unit dedicated to copper theft, both of infrastructure from properties, but also from critical infrastructure like pipes, water pipes, connections, and other municipal infrastructure. It's called the Copperheads. And their sole function is to go out and run intelligence-driven operations of apprehending these. And it's had a big difference in a place like Cape Town where this type of theft is massively down. And then secondly, I would say that we're not going to solve the crime crisis in South Africa with the current model of policing. The reality is we police in a way in which we were policing in the Victorian era. We've got to have a radical overhaul of the way we police in South Africa. We've got to modernize the police service and to harness the new technology that's available. For instance, 2 years ago when I was in Taiwan, I went specifically to go and look at how policing is done there because they have one of the lowest crime rates in the world. Okay. And I got into a police vehicle in Taiwan. It looked like the Starship Enterprise. It's connected to the Home Affairs system. There's cameras in there that are connected to the CCTV systems. All of the fingerprint recognition technology in there. You get into a South African police service vehicle, probably the most high-tech piece of equipment is the CB radio, and you're lucky if that's working. And so there's a whole lot of new technology, camera technology, drone technology, but you're never going to get that right if you don't make sure that you are training police personnel. The reality is there's a large number of police personnel are untrained, under-equipped, and some of whom themselves have criminal records. So if you don't have a police service that's fit for purpose, you're never going to get on top of the crime problem in South Africa.
Definitely, I agree with that. Now, with regards to, sir, with copper theft and, like you said, policing issues, it's not only the human resources that we have a problem with. For example, let's take one of the communities that the DA has a foot in, which is Chatsworth, and looking at the Bayview police station, for example, only having one vehicle, as well as if you look at RK Khans and other government facilities in the same area, in that vicinity, you're having problems with things like ambulance vehicles as well. Would you all be able to support with regards to combating these concerns?
Well, obviously, this comes down to prioritization of budget. And I've been to the Bayview police station. I've been to some of the other stations in Chatsworth that are also massively under-resourced. People working out of container units and the like, all these promises of new police stations to be built and better infrastructure to be put in. These are all incredibly important. But here's the thing. Every year we're told there's no budget for vehicles, for police personnel, and the like. But that's not the case. We spend 8 billion rand every year of your and listeners' money on VIP protection services for cabinet ministers. That's why there's no urgency around the crime problem, because if you're a cabinet minister or a deputy minister or some other high up official, you're surrounded constantly by police officers who drive you, protect you, look after you and your family, look after your home. And so crime's not an issue for people like that. That's why there's no priority. But people mustn't say there's no budget. There is budget. And we've said direct the 8 billion that you're spending on VIP protection services and direct it there. But also, where we govern, we've said very clearly, you can't sit on your hands and say, oh, well, this is a national function. So what we did in the city of Cape Town, in the province of the Western Cape, is started a program called the LEAP program, the Law Enforcement Advancement Program, where the city and the province have partnered to put 1,000 police officers on the street to keep people safe. And it has worked. Inyanga used to be one of the murder capitals of South Africa. There was a strong focus of the LEAP program in that area. It's now dropped out of the top list. It shows two things. Devolution of policing to a local level works. And secondly, that you can beat crime if you have the right focus and the right people doing the job. We can win that war. But it's going to require a mind shift change at a national level. You can't have a policing plan that's decided in Pretoria and then just simply laid over the country, like trying to hammer a square peg into a round hole. The problems in Chatsworth are very different to the problems in Constantia and Cape Town. The problems in Limpopo are very different to the problems.
If we look at Cape Town, for example, Cape Town was one of the most violent cities in the country. But I see you guys have implemented a gang a specialty of the police, or a gang unit rather.
So we've got a gang unit set up in the Metro Police Service because, as you probably know, despite the fact that there's a huge problem with gang violence in the Western Cape, the policing resources here in many of the stations are the worst ever. The police-to-population ratio is massive. So best practices, I think, is around about 100 people in a community to one police personnel. In many of those police stations, and I'm sure it's the same in Chatsworth and Phoenix, you're sitting with 500, 600 people to one police officer. So it's it's very, very difficult. So what the Metro Police did was set up a gang unit, because you're not going to fight gangs by simply doing. They're very clever. They know the system. Gang violence and gang activity is best solved through an intelligence-driven operation, and then a radical enforcement as a result of that. So it enables you to target your resources far more effectively, to understand where the drug houses are. And this is the thing that frustrates me about Chatsworth particularly. The police know where the tick houses are. They know where the sugar daddies are, and they know where this activity is taking place. And I get lots of emails and calls from residents in Chatsworth saying, "But the police drive past there. They stop. They go in. They come out. But the activity continues,
and
that's what frustrates people."
No, I'm sure that does frustrate. The thing is, with you spoke about something very important, because specifically in Chatsworth, we are having a problem with drug abuse, and the problem being, as the youth ambassador, I am trying to also survey the current challenges of the Indian communities and communities at large, and one of them being in Chatsworth is drug abuse amongst the future generation. Now, I know your hands are tied because there are challenges to be able to get to the root cause of these, but is it possible for the DA to help with regards to creating that awareness with all those challenges that the youngsters are facing, whether it's teen pregnancy, whether it's drug abuse, substance abuse, suicide for that matter? It is getting quite rife in these areas.
Well, it has been a big problem for a long time in Chatsworth particularly. And it's actually linked to some of the problems that you spoke about earlier. I would suggest that a lot of the copper theft and petty crime and theft from homes, etc., is driven by the drug trade. People need to get that money in to get their next fix of sugars or worse. So what you need here is a whole of society approach, and this is the approach that we believe is international best practice and works. That you bring together community-based organizations, church-based organizations, civil society bodies like service clubs, business forums and the like, together with police and community bodies to be able to address this problem. It's impossible for the police or civil society to address it on their own. You have to have a whole of society partnership that focuses on the problem. And it really does worry me, because people constantly say the youth are the leaders we need now.
Yeah.
And if we have a whole generation that are lost because they've fallen into a sea of drugs, you're not going to be able to advance the country. But I would make another point, is that one of the other major drivers of drug abuse and drug is a lack of opportunity around employment and advancement and studying for many of these young people. With an unemployment rate in the country of 42%, a youth unemployment rate that's the highest in the world, many of these youngsters have just given up hope of ever finding a job, of ever being able to sustain themselves.
Correct.
And that causes a depression and a sense of worthlessness, which many only find relief from through the highs that come from drugs. So we have to get our economy moving. We have to create jobs, and we have to have a youth focus on creating jobs. I would suggest that if we had a much lower unemployment rate, if we had young people that were actually in gainful employment and building a future for themselves, that far fewer of them would be succumbing to the drugs that they use to numb the hopelessness that exists in many communities.
All right. Another issue that we're having, it's a constant issue, Mr. Steenhuisen, is the repair work to the roads and the infrastructure of the roads, because it's patch work, basically, is what it is. Piecemeal jobs, yes.
Yeah.
Where a pothole is there, they'll go and repair it, and very poorly, mind you, and then after that, it's opened up again, and if not worse. So we need to change that.
So there's a crisis in the whole country, and it's not just in eThekwini.
No, it's all over. Yes, you're right.
Yeah, where we've taken over in Johannesburg and Tshwane. So what has happened over the last 30 years is that the budgets for the maintenance and rebuilding of existing infrastructure have been cannibalized by the nice-to-have projects, the stadiums, the housing places. You've never seen a mayor cutting a ribbon at a sewage treatment works or, an electricity substation that's been put in. So we've neglected infrastructure in South Africa for almost 30 years. And because those services are invisible, many municipalities have gotten away with neglecting it. But I think places like eThekwini now particularly, and Ugu in the South Coast and many others, have reached a tipping point where the life of that infrastructure has now come to an end. And because you haven't invested in repairing, maintaining, replacing properly, that is now collapsing, which is why you're sitting with the crisis there where the beaches, Durban, one of Durban's best advertisements, are swimming in E. coli, and it's going to really put the economy of Durban in a very, very difficult situation. So what you need to do is to take a portion of your budget every year and put it into maintenance. If you build something new, you need to then have the maintenance, the operational budget on the other side to maintain that asset for its life. You shouldn't be fixing potholes in roads. You should be replacing roads. Every road should be on a register in the municipality that tests its usable life and it's scheduled then for both maintenance but ultimately replacement. Because the patch jobs that you're seeing now are not working. There's 22 sewage pump stations in eThekwini. 18 of them are not working. And then we wonder why we've got a problem with sewage, and it's precisely because infrastructure has been neglected. And this is the real challenge of local government going forward. And local government's going to have to really sit down hard and think hard about what their priorities are, because it's not providing tracksuits for councillors to attend Salga or to have fancy marquee events or to open stadiums, etc. The job is service delivery. The Constitution is very clear, and you can't do that if you're not rolling out the infrastructure.
All right, now, Revati, you have a question for Mr. Steenhuisen.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Steenhuisen. Ward 61 in Tongaat, you'll hold some votes there, or some areas you'll are in charge of in Tongaat. Am I right in saying that?
I'm not sure I can't drill down to the actual ward numbers. I've got over 2,500 councillors. But I would imagine,
you are very famous. Sorry.
It sounds to me like it may well be a DA ward. I'm not.
Yes, it is a DA ward, Ward 61 in Tongaat. Now we all know that of all the people that have suffered from the April floods, Tongaat has been without water for 7 months or more. How has that been? What has DA been able to do with regards to that? Have you all had any say, or did you all also meet with roadblocks and challenges to support the people of Tongaat?
Yeah, so there are a number of challenges there, and again, it comes back to the infrastructure question and how quickly we can repair infrastructure. Make sure you've got the budget there, because yes, from time to time you are going to have natural disasters, but I would say to you that the damage in Tongaat and places like Umhloti, Westbrook, and Amaoti would not have been as severe had the stormwater system been maintained and there been proper infrastructure. So what we've been doing is, I was out in Buffelsdry when the thing first broke, bringing water tankers, water trucks, water for people to put in their homes. But it shouldn't be the case that you're 7 months down the line here, and there is a huge problem with eThekwini municipality not accessing the funds that national government has provided. And there's a reason for that. The reason for that is that they want to use Section 36 awards, and they know that the national government funding comes with a live real-time audit, because that's what we had to put in place after the COVID-19 14 billion rands worth of theft of public money that should have been used for combating went into people's pockets. So they don't want to be subject to those live audits, because they want to be able to direct those important infrastructure contracts to friends and networks.
Well, from what I see, Mr. Steenhuisen, it boils down to preventative maintenance. At those stormwater sewers being maintained constantly and regularly, we would not have that problem.
Absolutely correct. So when you've got things like mattresses and that in your stormwater system, when you have a big flood and your existing infrastructure is not up to scratch, it doesn't work. So, and I'm sorry to keep coming back to Cape Town as an example, but I think it does make the point that where you have government that's thinking about these things, it does make a difference. And I know it's no it's no comfort to anybody who's sitting in Chatsworth or Phoenix, who are sitting with poor service delivery. But what the city does is has a regular program of camera and jetting of the stormwater systems, because many informal settlement areas particularly, and some other more formal areas, stuff gets put into the stormwater system. And it's amazing. I mean, they put on their website the stuff that they pull out regularly from the stormwater systems. I mean, I think there was half a cow in one of the systems at one stage as well. So you've got to be able to, and it's not rocket science. There are plenty of contractors and small companies that have these drain cameras that they put in, and then if there's a blockage, they jet it out, or if necessary, where the obstruction is too big, but that is what you need to do. You need to be thinking about these things, not then trying to pick up the pieces after the crisis. And the small amount of money you spend on that preventative maintenance and on these services will save you big money later, because now you're talking about billions to fix the infrastructure in eThekwini, when you could have been spending hundreds of thousands on helping small businesses grow that do these services, bringing in public-private partnerships. But it would have, the old saying, a stitch in time saves nine.
100%,
no, definitely.
100%, yeah.
But, Mr. Steenhuisen, I just want to ask something on behalf of majority of the communities that you are in charge of, is unfortunately sometimes they are having broken telephone. They are having times when they are frustrated because they're not knowing what's happening. And unfortunately, we have to wait for times like this when you come on air and to understand the true causes. Is there any other way to possibly have a transparent and clear, link between what are the current challenges and, with the people that have voted for you in their community, so they know exactly what are the concerns and how are you actually going about and tackling it? I think that's what's going to win the confidence as well for yourself.
So I think that programs like this are very important, and what you should be doing is bringing councillors on from those various wards to talk through the problems and maybe have a call-in from some of the residents to be able to express that. I mean, the Mayor of Cape Town has his own radio program. Our mayors in Tshwane and Joburg have regular programming where people phone in and raise their concerns.
I like
the
that.
second thing here, and this is important because, yes, we've got to have active politicians, but you also have to have active communities.
Yeah.
The integrated development plan is required to have public consultation processes every year. People need to go to that and hold their elected representatives and the city officials accountable. The budget process every year requires a public participation process where local communities hold the city and their local representatives accountable. Councillors are required to have report back meetings quarterly within their wards, and that's a matter of the law. And if that's not happening, and people are welcome to kick the problem upstairs and contact our provincial office in KwaZulu-Natal, where our provincial chairman, Dean McPherson, and Francois Rogers are. And if they're still not getting success, they're welcome to send it to my email address, which is leader@da.org.za. But they must please try the other angles first.
As a last resort, they come to you.
But there's also the contact details of all our public representatives are also on our website, www.da.org.za. It's got councillors' email addresses, contact numbers, and the like, and hyperlinks so that you can click and send emails to them directly.
No.
So people do need to, and where we have councillors who do not perform, we do take action. We've just removed a councillor in Pietermaritzburg for non-performance, and it's tough because we now have to face a by-election in that ward, but we would rather face a by-election than subject the community to a councillor who's not living up to their expectations.
100%. Now, before I let you go, Mrs. Steenhuisen, and not to take up too much of your time, and in about 13 days or so, we would have to know if President Cyril Ramaphosa has a case to answer for the Phala Phala saga. Are we going to hear one of those infamous speeches from you in Parliament? Who writes those, by the way? They're absolutely fantastic.
We like them.
I write my own material. Cut my teeth in eThekwini municipality. Look, I mean, I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah.
I have a concern, and I will share it with you.
Yeah.
You may recall that we suggested in Parliament that we rather have an ad hoc committee
Yeah.
that looks into the Pala matter, that calls the president, that calls Wally Roeder, that calls the people involved before Parliament to account.
Yeah.
Because my fear is that the judges that are sitting on this panel and the retired judges, their job is to find out whether there's a prima facie evidence
Yeah.
of wrongdoing. I suspect that what you're going to see is them coming back and saying, well, at the moment, this remains hearsay, there's no concrete evidence, and we should wait for the law enforcement agencies to finish their work, which is precisely why we said let's do the ad hoc committee first and the impeachment afterwards.
Yeah.
But some of the other opposition parties wanted to rush ahead and do the impeachment process. So what we're going to do is, whatever the report says, we're going to continue to push for an ad hoc committee in Parliament, like we had with Nkandla.
Yeah.
I just think this current process may have put the cart before the horse, and I think that it may give the president a knot to slip away from.
Well, with the ANC step-aside policy is probably what he's avoiding, if ever.
Well, absolutely, and I mean, there's been no criminal charge laid.
Yeah, exactly.
There's been no prosecution that's begun. I reported it to the public protector. We're still waiting now for the public protector to finish the work that is required.
Even the
to be
public
done there.
protector's having a bit of an issue in her.
Well,
her office.
I'm dealing with the acting public protector,
all right,
not
perfect.
not the delinquent public protector, the constitutional delinquent.
You don't
Let me
mince
tell
your
you,
words,
if
eh?
I'd lost 38 court cases in a row, I think I would have hit my head under the duvet and not come back to work. But some people have, obviously have different standards.
All right, Mr. John Steenhuisen, thank you so much for coming on to the Big Breakfast Show. We'll chat soon, and have yourself a fantastic day. Best of luck with
Thank
all
you.
your endeavors.
And wonderful, and thank you for the job you guys are doing in sharing news in the community and holding us accountable. It's important.
Thank you so much for stepping on.
Thank you so much.
Let's see who else decides to come on after you. But have yourself a fantastic day, and thank you for coming on to Southside FM. Goodbye.
Thank you for the opportunity.